Some people look at themselves and think that they're bad, but other people look at themselves and they think they're good. And so Samson reminds us, you're not good. That power wasn't from you. That's what Samson sees, right? He realizes once his hair is cut that all of this power was coming from God. And he maybe not ever acknowledged God for that. And at this point, he's humbled and he realizes, oh, I don't have any power in myself. We talked about last week how maybe he thought, even though he let his hair get cut, which disobeyed God and made him no longer dedicated to God, maybe he thought he was still going to get to have that power, because it says that he woke up and he thought he was going to break free from the Philistines just like he had every other time. And God's like, no, you're not, because that power came from me and I'm no longer giving it to you. And so maybe God also gave power to a weak and flawed man so that it will remind those of us that might be feeling arrogant and self-righteous that, yeah, nothing is from you. You're not good in yourself. Like, those people that are going to church, maybe they know that they're flawed and they're thinking the same thing about you. That very well is possible. They may be looking at you and thinking, I don't act like her. I'm not good enough like her. But they also might have bought into the lie that they are good. And maybe they've bought into the lie that you're bad. And God wants them to know the story about Samson also and say, you're not good. You break laws just like everybody else. And your sin may not be as visible as their sin. And I think that's why, with Samson, we realize that his weakness is women, and he gives into this weakness, and it's so visible to us, right? And so, maybe our sin isn't visible like someone else's, but we have sins. And so we can't sit here and say to ourselves, oh, I don't do that. Oh, I don't do that. Oh, I don't do that. I'm a good person. I would never do that. Can you believe that she does those things and she comes to church on Sunday morning? Things like that. We can't say that because God is saying, you're only good because I give you this goodness. You only have power and strength because I give it to you. And so I'm going to read you a couple of verses about that. Luke 18:9-14 talks about a man that is thinking these things about himself. And it says that he spoke a parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous. So Jesus is telling these people that are thinking this about themselves, like, oh, I am good, but these people aren't. He tells them this story. And it says, 2 men went to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee and the other was a tax collector. So the one that keeps all the laws is the Pharisee, and then the tax collector is the most hated one that everybody thinks is the worst. And it says the Pharisee stood there and prayed and said, God, I thank you that I am not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, and even like this tax collector over here. I fast twice a week. I give tithes to all that I possess. And then the tax collector, he stands afar off, and he wouldn't so much as raise his eyes to heaven, but he beat his breast and he says, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other one. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and everyone who humbles himself will be exalted. And so we need to be very careful not to think of ourselves better than we are. Not to think that whatever gifts that God has given us, then those are of us, that we're good at those things. That the reason we have this job or the reason we're able to do these things is because of something we've done. We have to remember, no, we are sinners just like all the rest of those people. And if we're not careful and we don't remind ourselves of that, then our pride just might be our downfall, right? It talks about this all over Proverbs, but I just picked a couple of them. Proverbs 13:10 says, by pride comes nothing but strife, but with the well advanced is wisdom. 16:18 says, pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit goes before a fall. So if you're thinking too good of yourselves, you might be about to fall. So you better watch it. And then 28:25 says, he who is proud of heart stirs up strife, but he who trusts in the Lord will be prospered. So whoever thinks it's of himself is going to just cause more problems. But whoever realizes that everything they have is from God and places their trust in him for that, then they're going to be prosperous. And so we have to be really careful not to think that anything is of ourselves, because everything is of God. In John 15:4-8, it says that if we don't remain in him, then we won't be able to do anything. It says, abide in me and I in you. As the branch can't bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine and you are the branches. He abides in me and I in him. For without me, you can do nothing. If anyone doesn't abide in me, he is cast out as a branch and is withered. And they gather them and they throw them into the fire and they're burned because they have no use, right? And if you do abide in me and my words abide in you, then you will ask what you desire and it'll be done for you. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, so you will be my disciples. Again, pointing everything to God. By you bearing the fruit of the Spirit, God is glorified. But the only way you can do that is to stay close to God, stay connected to him. If you're not connected to him, like the branches are connected to the vine, then you won't bear fruit, right? So we have to be aware that all that we have that is good or right is from the Lord.